The Minnesota Vikings are making NFL history following an NFL scheduling leak, which has been rumored for the last week and now is becoming true. The Minnesota Vikings are going to be the first team in NFL history to play back-to-back NFL international games, going from Dubs, Ireland, to London to play the Steelers and Browns. And I'm going to talk about my first reaction of how stupid this was and how dumb it is on today's podcast. But first, I need to tell you about 5-Star Bath Solutions of Minneapolis, because they remodeled our bathroom in 48 hours. Not just a floor or a tub, a full bathroom remodel in 48 hours. And it is becoming the bathroom of our dreams. Everything that we would have wanted in a 6 to 8 week project got done in 48 hours. New floors, new shower, new surround, new sink, went from a single to a double sink, new vanity. We went from an embarrassing, outdated, and moldy bathroom to an updated, value-adding bathroom to our house. And it's everything we would have wanted or asked for. And we didn't have to cram into a teeny tiny bathroom downstairs. We were able to have our bathroom back in days. No more waiting 6 to 8 weeks for these projects to get done where you cram into one single bathroom. 5-Star Bath Solutions of Minneapolis will get your bathroom remodel done quick and done right. They are the best option. 5-Star Bath Solutions of Minneapolis. All right, so the Minnesota Vikings, the schedule is released. And early in the season, they play the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday, September 28th. And then the following week, they play the Cleveland Browns on Sunday, October 5th. You know, the worst thing about these starts is that a man's got to go to church and feel blessed by God. And an 8:30 start really sucks. You know, there's nothing like coming back from church. You have a breakfast, you have a little brunch, and then you sit down for a 12 o'clock game. Any other start sucks. A 3 o'clock start stinks because then it wastes your afternoon and then it gets dark out by the time the game's over. You have to find time for dinner. Even a 7:30 start, everyone loves primetime games. Oh, I hate primetime games. Give me a 12 o'clock start from week 1 through week 17, and everything will be right with the world. All the world's problems will just go away with a 12 o'clock start for the Vikings. So 8:30 is the worst part about this whole ordeal. Plus, on Sunday, October 5th, our church has the biggest event of the year. So that will be a game that I only catch highlights of and moments of. But regardless, let's stop talking about me and start talking about the Minnesota Vikings. Is this dumb? Is it dumb to have back-to-back NFL international games? Does this put the Minnesota Vikings at a severe disadvantage? One question that I really do have is that what benefit is it to the Minnesota Vikings to be a team that regularly plays NFL international football games? Because these games are not going away. In fact, they are adding more and more of them every single year. They played in Germany last year. They're playing in Germany this year. They're playing in Ireland this year. They will always play in London. I get that having a presence overseas is good for the NFL brand and getting the NFL more exposure and more eyes on the NFL, because more eyes is always a good thing. And having relationships with different countries overseas and getting exposure to your brand will always win in the company's eyes. But what benefit is it to the Minnesota Vikings to play back-to-back overseas games? Because there are some disadvantages to this of, okay, you need to pack for 2 weeks and you need to prepare for Cleveland in London without your facility that is top class, top of the notch in Egan. So I'm sure there are advantages to this from the Vikings' perspective. And I'm sure there are things that I don't quite recognize on why the Vikings keep on playing overseas games. Because they did it last year, they skipped 2023, and then they did it in 2022 where they played the Saints. One advantage to playing back-to-back overseas football games is that one, I guess we're playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I don't think is an opponent the Vikings should fear, because who's their quarterback? Probably Aaron Rodgers. And then they face the Cleveland Browns, another team whose quarterback is largely an unknown at this point in time, because they have like 4 quarterbacks on their roster. One advantage to playing overseas is the opponents, at least in this case. Another advantage I see is that, okay, you play Pittsburgh, that's a wash in terms of advantage, whatever team. But it would almost seem like the Vikings would have an advantage because they are practically already in London to face the Cleveland Browns. So getting your clock shifted, your body clock that is, and getting adjusted, the flight time, in terms of that being a factor, if it really is one, that's advantage Minnesota Vikings. I want to go back all the way to 2022 because the Vikings played an international game on October 2nd versus the Saints and won 28-25. I think that was the doink off the upright and in. And I think that's how the Vikings won that game. The very next week, the Vikings played the Chicago Bears at home on October 9th and won 29-22. It is a much bigger advantage for the Vikings to play back-to-back overseas games than it is for the Vikings to play overseas against the Pittsburgh Steelers on September 28th and then have to fly all the way back to Minnesota, get adjusted, get ready, get your prep time in, and face the Cleveland Browns the very next week at US Bank Stadium. So I'm really not panicked about this whole ordeal. The one big question I have is why are the NFL teams so interested in overseas games? Why have the Vikings committed so much to overseas games? But as far as back-to-back international games go, there's actually a competitive advantage to the Minnesota Vikings playing back-to-back overseas games than playing back-to-back, one overseas and one in the great state of Minnesota, which we call home. So players might not like it because Jonathan Grenard, the Minnesota Vikings defender, saw it and replied to it on Instagram saying SMA, shaking my head. And if I was a player, I would hate this too, because these guys also have personal lives and family lives, and you're ripping them away from their families for 2 weeks to play overseas football games. And I'm sure they love their breaks from football from time to time. And you don't really get a break when you're overseas and you're traveling and you're not home and all of those things. So I feel for them. But as far as disadvantage, advantage, it actually makes sense to play back-to-back overseas games than to play in London and then to play in Minnesota the following week. Because what is going to happen in 2025 is that the Vikings will play the Steelers, and then the Vikings will play the Browns, and then the Vikings will have their bye week in week 6 following a doubleheader overseas. So as much as you want to panic about overseas football games, the NFL is actually doing the Minnesota Vikings a favor in playing back-to-back overseas games than playing a back-to-back overseas game and then a game in Minnesota. So we'll see how it all shapes up, because this is the first time in NFL history that a team is playing back-to-back games overseas. Another story that was revealed yesterday, and I think this is absurd. Like, this kind of grinds my gears a little bit. It really just kind of pisses me off. The MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred removed Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson and other deceased players from the league's permanently ineligible list on Tuesday. Manfred ruled that MLB's punishment of banned individuals ends upon their deaths. What is the difference between a player being inducted into the Hall of Fame when they are alive and when they are dead? I'm sure Pete Rose is jumping for joy in heaven or hell right now, because he can now finally be inducted into Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame. I can imagine a conversation between Pete Rose and Major League Baseball. Pete Rose asks a question and says, "Hey guys, yo, what about me? When can I get inducted into the Hall of Fame? Can I get inducted into the Hall of Fame?" And the MLB responds, "Oh, of course. Absolutely. You have a chance to be eligible. All you have to do is pass a certain criteria." Pete Rose, "Well, what's the criteria? How do I get in? This has been something I've been begging for forever, and I'm one of the greatest players in MLB history." Major League Baseball responds, "Die. All you have to do is die." Done. I can do that. This is just one of the saddest stories, because Pete Rose has been trying to get into the Hall of Fame forever. And although he cheated the game by doing a little gambling, I'm sure that happens way more than anybody ever recognizes. Shohei Ohtani was allegedly doing it and then had a fall guy, it appears, and got out from underneath that stuff. But that was a big allegation against him. And it turned out he's innocent, I think. But it's just a little sad to me. And it really fires me up. Because it's like, no, you can't get into the Hall of Fame. You cheated, you gambled, unfair, can't get in. No, you decided your pathway a long time ago, and it's not fair to the game to let you in. But as soon as you die, okay, fine, the gates of heaven are open and the gates to being inducted into the Hall of Fame are there. And maybe the voters that decide who gets into the Hall of Fame and who doesn't will still vote against the gambling thing. But it just sits a little terribly in my stomach that Pete Rose can now be inducted into the Hall of Fame now that he's dead. It's just stupid. It's a dumb thing. Let him in when he's alive. I guess there's some benefit to his family. Maybe they can have some peace. But if I'm the family, I'm just thinking, okay, we've been vying for this thing for years. We've had discussions, we've had meetings, and every single year, every single discussion, you closed this possible bridge. And now that he's dead, now you're letting him in? WTF? To many degrees. It's just a little sickening if I was the family. If I was Pete Rose's son or daughter, and now they're letting him in, I wouldn't be jumping for joy at this moment. I would be thinking, this is incredibly stupid. Why is it now that he passes the criteria to be entering the Hall of Fame? He still gambled. That doesn't change anything about the fact. It's not like now that he's dead, he didn't gamble on baseball. But I guess that's how the MLB sees eligible players in the Hall of Fame. All you have to do is die, and then you'll be eligible. Sits wrong for me. All right, everyone. Thank you for watching and listening. Remember, 5-Star Bath Solutions of Minneapolis. Contact them today, and they will remodel your bathroom in 48 hours and get you the bathroom of your dreams. No longer waiting 6 to 8 weeks for projects to get done. They have affordable payment plans and free consultations. 5-Star Bath Solutions of Minneapolis. Everyone, have a great day, and thank you for going on this podcasting journey with me.